We are joined by today's guest, Ethan Greene, who has worked with snow and avalanches since 1990 and directed the Colorado Avalanche Information Center since 2005. Ethan grew up in Boulder and worked as a ski patroller at Big Sky and as a backcountry avalanche forecaster for the U.S. Forest Service Utah Avalanche Forecast Center. He has a PhD from Colorado State University, where he studied snow metamorphism and microstructure, and now lives in Leadville with his wife and kids. Ethan, thank you so much for joining us here at Backpacker Radio.
Thanks for having me.
A lot to unpack just from this intro. Let's start with your background in outdoor sports.
Well, growing up in Boulder, that pretty much started as soon as you could walk. So, my family was really into kind of all things in the mountains in Colorado, and so I was introduced to outdoor sports, pretty early. Backcountry skiing, alpine skiing, peak climbing was definitely a favorite of the Juniper Street Collective where I grew up, and backpacking. I got into kayaking as a kind of young adult, so it kind of runs the gamut.
Have you always had a fascination with snow in particular?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Any moments, like light bulb moments as a kid where you thought, like, man, I want to go on to become a PhD in snow, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a thing, and no light bulb moments that as a kid that made me want to study snow, but lots where snow was really important, both, for recreation. In Boulder at that point, like, we would get really big snowstorms, much bigger than at least what I remember recently. And, so my cousins and I would go out and do all of the things that kids do in the snow just locally. So, it was a big part of everything we did in the wintertime.
Do you recall a particular winter that was like the epic snowstorm of the foothills? Is there such a thing?
I definitely remember some events. I don't remember what years they were at this point. It was a long time ago, but yeah, there were some snowstorms as a kid that made huge impressions on us. Both, we were in Boulder, but at that point, we were kind of in this old farmhouse, and so we had kind of orchards in the back, and so I remember some snowstorms as a tot where everything was just coated in so much snow, and we would climb up into trees and jump off, and we had like kind of outbuildings and stuff, and then sledding in our neighborhood was a huge part of what we did, just with all the neighborhood kids, kind of packs of kids on sleds in the foothills of Boulder. So yeah, it was everyday life, really.
And speaking of sliding on snow, I know that you live obviously in Leadville now. Can you tell us about that massive, is it skijoring? What's the big winter event in Leadville?
The Crystal Carnival.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. One of my favorites actually is not the skijoring, but is the paintball biathlon.
That's hilarious.
Which is a really good time. But skijoring is, it's... Leadville is part of kind of a circuit of skijoring events around the West, where people, there's a lot to it actually. I don't understand all of it, but essentially they have a course where skiers get towed behind horses. They have rings they have to collect along the way. They have turns and jumps they have to make, and it's pretty intense. They're going fast. They're catching a fair amount of air onto really hard, flat surfaces, which is something as a skier I would definitely, not recommend.
Yeah, sounds like a torn ligament waiting to happen.
But it's a cool event, and there's people that are really into it, people that have been into it for a long period of their lives. And do, it's almost like a rodeo circuit in some ways. And the Leadville event is a lot of fun. They closed down the main street, Harrison there, and set up the course. And it's a spectacle. There's no way around it.
Yeah. And aside from horses dragging skiers on that main drag there, I know that all the spectators, it's a big party. People really enjoy their time there.
It is a big party. Leadville is... It likes a good party, and that event fits right in.
And I'm trying to piece together your intro here. So I got Boulder, Fort Collins, Big Sky, Leadville. So have you lived your entire life in the Rockies?
Yeah, I have. I spent some time in Europe as a grad student, but otherwise, yeah, I went from Colorado to Montana to Utah, and then back to Colorado. So,
Is that just the way that life played out, or do you feel like a certain magnetism to the Rocky Mountains?
no, that's the way life played out. In fact, I did not want to move back to Colorado, but my wife. She was brought back here, and so I followed her. We weren't married at the time, so I was trying to get married, but my wife at this point. But I had no real interest in coming back to Colorado, and it's actually interesting. In this job working for the Avalanche Center, I get to see a lot of mountains in the state, and in some ways, I think I've come to appreciate the state more as an adult than I did as a kid. As a kid, it was where we lived. It was how things were, and we spent a lot of time in different parts of the state. But in some ways, I guess I took it for granted. And as an adult, I certainly view it in a different way. I've got to see some parts of the state that I didn't appreciate it, as much, or maybe even didn't have as much experience in, as an adult. And so, it's been a lot of fun coming back here.
How do you go from knowing, okay, I like the snow stuff, I like the skiing, to I want a doctorate in snow? Because I feel like with someone telling me that they have a doctorate in snow, like almost sounds made up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if someone tells you they have a doctorate in snow, you definitely should question them, because there's a good chance that they are making it up. Again, like it wasn't a path that I picked. It was a path that I followed. So, to kind of take the short version, I guess, after high school in Boulder, I told my parents I was not going to college ever, and moved to Telluride to ski and climb. There I fell in with the wrong crowd, who introduced me to avalanches and the science behind them. And so I started learning a little bit about the science of avalanches, because I was really interested in spending time in avalanche terrain, and I had some good mentors who sort of pushed me in that direction. And then I decided that I wanted to dig deeper into it, and so I went to Montana State University in Bozeman, because that was really one of the only places where you can really look at snow and avalanches from that scientific perspective. And there, again, I fell in with the wrong crowd, and got some good mentors who were kind of encouraging me, and I kind of bounced back and forth between ski patrolling and academia for a while, because I wasn't really sure which one I wanted to do, or if I wanted to do either necessarily. And eventually, the school told me that I had to pick a major, because I was kind of doing engineering and earth science, and I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to do. And so I left and went to finish a degree in meteorology at the University of Utah. There again, I fell in with the wrong crowd, and I had professors that encouraged me to go to graduate school. I hadn't really thought about doing that. I figured I was going to go back into ski patrolling. And my wife had gotten into medical school in Denver, and so I went to Colorado State, did another master's. Last month of that, the phone rang, and Bruce Tremper, who was running the Utah Center at that point, asked me if I wanted to come work for him for a bit, and so I went and did that. And then, kind of drifted back into school to study a specific type of structure in the snow that I had seen working in Utah. And then about a year before I was going to get done there, Knox Williams, who was the director of the CAIC and had founded it, called me up and said he was retiring and asked me if I wanted to apply. He was kind of trying to drum up candidates, and I didn't really think that I wanted that job, but I figured the last guy who had it for 25 years, and so maybe I should put my hat in the ring, and got it, and the rest is kind of history. So it's not so short, but that's the Reader's Digest version.
Cool.
Is there a rough estimate of how many people in the world have a PhD in snow?
Well, it depends on snow actually covers kind of a lot of different pieces. So there's a group of us out there. It's not a super small group, especially if you start looking at ice mechanics, Arctic and Antarctic science versus like seasonal snow, which is what I do. And, there's a lot of remote sensing that deals with the cryosphere. So there's definitely a bigger group out there than you'd expect, but it's not that they, myself either, or any of us would have, Dr. Snow. It's more like, people have degrees in engineering or physics, but specialize in snow. I started in atmospheric science, so I really came at it from the meteorological perspective. And there's a whole section of people there that deal with clouds and the physics of clouds. And so a lot of my background was in kind of how snow forms from a crystalline structure in the clouds, and then I kind of translated that to the ground.
Since your focus is in climate, I'm curious to learn over the last, I don't know, pick any number of years, say 30, 50 years, how has the winters in the Rockies specifically changed?
We're tending to see kind of a shorter snow season. A lot of that is a condensed a melt cycle. So we see runoff happen over a shorter period of time, that going from snow on the high peaks to everything melting and running off